Hi students, and welcome to your next virtual learning lesson for math class. I'm Mrs. Gravenese. Let's go over our ready to learn standards. Make sure that you find a quiet place to work, have out a pencil in your math notebook, and message your teacher if you need help. All right, we are wrapping up chapter 11 today. We are going to convert metric units of capacity. Now, if you have watched the previous two videos, we took a look at converting metric units of length and mass. Well, capacity is pretty much the same thing. We're going to move the decimal point in order to change from one unit to the next. So just as a refresher, here is our reminder that the metric system is a base 10 system of measuring, which means we only have to move the decimal point to the left or right a certain number of times. And that's because it's based off of place value. There's a way to remember the units for the metric system with this handy little saying, King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. Remember that each of the letters, the first letters of the words in that sentence, go along with each of the prefixes that attach to our root base unit. So the K for king also stands for kilo, such as kilometer, which we say kilometer, or kilogram, or as you're going to see today, kiloliter. The H stands for hecto, D is for deca. Those two aren't used very often. The U just represents our base unit. So that would be either the meter, if you're measuring length, the gram, if you're measuring mass, or we're going to see today, the liter if you're measuring capacity. The next D is for deci, the C is for centi, and the M is for milli, such as millimeter, milligram, or milliliter. So remember that you can use this continuum to help you move the decimal points in your numbers, and that will help you to convert in the metric system. So today we're talking about capacity. Capacity is the amount a container can hold. So I've shown you before, and I always have some kind of water or drink right near me, and the capacity is the amount that this container can hold. And it's not marked off on this guy, but I know that if this were filled all of the way, it would be 24 fluid ounces. Now, fluid ounces would go with the customary system. Today, we're looking at the metric system. So our base unit for the metric system is the liter, L-I-T-E-R. We represent liter with a capital L. And 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. So you can see that prefix, milli, attached to the base word liter. The abbreviation for milliliters is a lowercase m, capitalized L. We're going to capitalize the L's so that they don't look like a 1. Okay, that's why we do that with the L. So there's really only two units that we're focusing on today. These are the most common for metric capacity. We don't often use the other units, so we're going to just focus right here. However, if we were switching to any of the other units, it would still be the same idea. Count your number of hops. So what is a milliliter? It's the amount of liquid in an eyedropper. So we're talking about drops of a liquid. That's not a whole lot. A liter is about a medium-sized sports drink. Okay, so if you're drinking a small container of soda, that might be a liter. Or if you're having a Gatorade, a bigger Gatorade, that would be a liter. All right, and here is our continuum for capacity. I've highlighted the two units that we use in red. So we're going to work today with the base unit, liter, and then the smaller unit, milliliter. We've been working with kilo in the other metric systems, but we don't talk often about a kiloliter. It's just not something we use day to day. So there's really only two here to go back and forth with. So it makes it a little easier. All right, let's play a matching game. We're going to match the picture to the best unit of measure to find the length. Now we can measure any of these capacities with either of these units, but which one would make the most sense? So first up, we have a bathtub filled with water. Would it make more sense to measure the capacity of that bathtub in liters or in milliliters? We would want to use liters for that guy. If you use milliliters, it would just take a whole lot. Think of counting all of the drops of water. That would take a long time. You would lose count. It would be easier to scoop out Gatorade bottles full of water and count them. All right, the next one is a small medicine cup. All right, so if you get sick and you have to take some Robitussin or some Dimetapp or other kind of liquid Tylenol, what would we want to measure this in? Liters or milliliters? Milliliters. This is a small amount, okay? So liters, it would definitely not be a whole liter. It would be a fractional amount of a liter. So let's just use milliliters. Next is a nail polish container. What would the capacity of that nail polish container be? Yeah, milliliters again. This is a small container, so we want to use a small unit of measure. Whoops, wrong guy. So let's use milliliters. And how about a gas can? Liters, yes. Not quite as much as a bathtub, but definitely enough where we would not want to count little drops of water from an eyedropper. All right, so those can just give you some reference as we move through these problems. And here we go. Let's do some converting. Remember that King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. Our first problem is 2.4 liters equals how many milliliters? So just as a reminder, we always start at our first unit that's given to us. So we're starting at liters up here. And then we're hopping over to milliliters, okay? So let's look at our continuum and count our hops. So going from liters to milliliters. 1, 2, 3 hops, and we went to the right. So that means we have to move this decimal point 3 hops to the right. So let's take it and do a little hopping. Now, as you can see, 3 hops puts us past the last digit. So we're going to add in a couple of zeros to help us. Okay, so let's move this decimal point 3 hops to the right. 1, 2, and 3. So we've had to add those 2 zeros or annex 2 zeros so that we can use those places that we need. So what do we get? 2400, which is 2,400. So 2.4 liters would be 2,400 milliliters. I certainly would not want to count to 2,400 little drops of water. So that's why we would use 2.4 liters instead. All right, let's look at another example. $967 milliliters equals how many liters? So we're going from here, milliliters, over to our base unit, liters. So we're going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit. So let's start at those milliliters and hop over to liters. 1, 2, 3. 3 to the left. So we need to take our decimal point and move it 3 to the left. Now, 967 is a whole number. We don't see a decimal point, so it's a whole number. And when we have a whole number, the decimal point really lives at the end on the right. Don't forget that. You can't just put it wherever you want to put it to start. 1 puts it between the 6 and 7. 2 puts it between 9 and 6, but we need a third. 3 hops to the left puts it just before the 9. And now usually we put a 0 to the left of the decimal point to show that we have no holes. So 967 milliliters are equal to 0.967 liters. Now, that's almost a whole liter. And remember, there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter. So 967 is close to 1,000. So it makes sense that this is close to the whole that it makes. All right, now we have a comparison problem. And I noticed on a lot of the assignments, students were having a little more trouble with the comparison ones than they were with just the regular converting. Remember that you always want to convert to one of the units first, and then you make your comparison. I just always convert to the smaller unit. I think it's a little simpler when we do customary, so I just do the same for metric. However, you could change it to either one. So as you can see, I chose to convert to a smaller unit. We're comparing 5.2 liters. Imagine that. That's like a little more than 5 big Gatorade bottles. And we're comparing that to 520 milliliters. That's like 520 drops of water. Now, if you're starting to get comfortable with this continuum and understanding the metric system, you might be able to figure this one out without doing the conversion. However, I still want you to try the conversion, at least right now, until you get really good at it. So let's convert to the smaller unit. If we're comparing liters and milliliters, milliliters are smaller. So let's change 5.2 liters into milliliters. So here's my conversion. 5.2 liters are how many milliliters? Let's count our hops, starting at liters. 1, 2, 3 hops to get to milliliters, to the right. So let's move that decimal point 3 to the right. And as you can see, when I start planning this out and doing 3 hops, I have these empty spaces, and we add our zeros in those empty spaces. 1, that makes it 52. 2 is 520, and 3 times makes it 5,200. So 5.2 liters is the same amount as 5,200 milliliters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change 5.2 liters, and I'm going to make it into that 5,200 milliliters. And it might help you if you actually cross it out and rewrite it. That way you can see we're comparing the same unit now. I'm comparing milliliters and milliliters. And it's pretty obvious that 5,200 milliliters is greater than 520 milliliters. So 5.2 liters is greater than 520 milliliters. How are you doing with this? This is the 3rd time we've been doing a very similar lesson. So hopefully you're getting a little bit better at it by now. But this can be very tricky. Understanding decimal place value is tough enough, and then when we add these conversions into it, makes it even harder. So don't give up, keep trying. Here are some more practice problems that you can take a look at. So here's our continuum up top. King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. And don't forget, today we're looking at capacity, so we're looking at liter as our base unit, and also focusing on the milliliter, those little drops of water in an eyedropper. So here are a couple of problems. We're going from 70 liters to how many milliliters. So I want you to think about where you're going to move the decimal point. In which direction? We're going liters to milliliters. Are you moving that decimal to the left or to the right? You're moving it to the right because we're starting at liters and we're hopping over to milliliters. Now, how many times will you move that decimal point? 3 times. Count your hops. 1, 2, 3. Remember that in 70, it's a whole number. The decimal point lives right after that 0. So you need to move that decimal point 3 times to the right. Think about what your answer will be. You can check in with your teacher to see if you're correct. Number 6, 10 milliliters are how many liters? Now we're going from the small little guy milliliters up to the base unit liters. So which direction will our decimal point move? Yeah, we're moving to the left this time And how many hops? 3. 1, 2, 3. So take your decimal point, it lived at the end of the zero, behind the zero, and move it 3 times to the left. Is your answer going to be a whole number or a decimal? It's going to be a decimal if we're moving it 3 times to the left. Again, check in with your teacher if you want to see if your answer is correct. Number 7, 1.2 liters are how many milliliters? This is going to follow the same pattern as number 5 because we're using the exact same units. So taking our decimal point, if we're going from liters to milliliters, we're going to the right. And how many times? 3 times. Over here, milliliters to liters, same as number 6. Going which way? To the left. How many times? 3 times. So it's a lot of the same thing over and over. So you can continue to work on these. I'll pause, I'll stop and you can pause the video, copy down some of those other problems. Hit play when you're ready. Be careful that you see the difference between a decimal point and a comma. This number 11 is 6.21 liters, and number 12 is 5,000 milliliters. They can look a little bit the same. All right, and then there's 13, 14, 15, all the way through 18. So there's 6 comparisons here. Make sure that you change to one of the units. I would cross it out, rewrite what it equals when you convert it, and then make your comparison. All right, so you have plenty of practice work before you even do the assignment. If you were struggling with the metric system, I would really encourage you to do these problems on paper in your notebook, check in with your teacher, ask them if you got these correct. You could take a picture of it and then attach it in a message to your teacher and then get some feedback. Remember that we're here to help you, and the only way we can really help you as if we were in class is if there's back and forth. So you need to let us know where you're struggling. You need to let us check your work, and then we can help you much better. All right, that is it for today. That is also it for this chapter. So make sure you go back and review, because you know at the end of the chapter there's going to be a quiz. And then I'll see you in our next lesson for the beginning of chapter 12, all about geometry. All right, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you later.